Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the UNES Compassion and watched the stars streak past. Her ship was the largest in the convoy, carrying enough medical supplies to save hundreds of thousands of lives. Behind her, 11 other Earth ships followed in perfect formation. They were all heading to Theta Virtus, a world that desperately needed help. 3 days ago, a massive solar flare had hit the planet. The burst of radiation had destroyed every power generator, every computer, every communication device on the surface. 340,000 Verdesians were trapped down there without electricity, without medicine, without any way to call for help. Their thick blue skin could handle their planet's normal radiation, but without their protective shields, they were dying. One of their ships had managed to escape before the flare hit. That ship had carried the news to the Galactic Council. The Council had held an emergency meeting. One by one, the alien representatives had expressed their sadness. They had offered their thoughts and prayers. Some had even sent messages of support to the Verdesian people, but nobody had sent actual help. Nobody except Earth. Elena remembered watching the Council broadcast with her crew. She had seen the Verdesian ambassador, Korath, his blue face wet with tears as he begged for assistance. She had seen the other aliens look away, making excuses. Their ships were too far away. Their supplies were committed elsewhere. Perhaps in a few weeks they could send something. The Verdesians did not have a few weeks. Earth's response had come within 2 hours. Admiral Sarah Mitchell herself had appeared on every major news channel across human space. Her message was simple and direct: we're going. Launch everything we have. That had been 48 hours ago. In that time, humanity had assembled the largest relief convoy in galactic history. 12 ships loaded with power generators, medical equipment, food synthesizers, water purifiers, and 2,000 of Earth's best doctors, nurses, and engineers. Dr. James Chen walked onto the bridge carrying 2 cups of coffee. He handed one to Elena and stood beside her looking out at the stars. "Can't sleep?" she asked. "Too much to think about," James replied. He was a thin man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had been a surgeon for 30 years, had saved thousands of lives, but he had never been part of something this big. "Do you think we'll make it in time?" "We have to," Elena said simply. James nodded. They both knew the statistics. Every hour they delayed, another 100 Verdesians would die from radiation sickness, from infected wounds, from simple dehydration. The planet's infrastructure had completely collapsed. "The other species think we're crazy," James said. "Did you see the Hexian ambassador's speech? He said we're wasting resources on people who failed to prepare adequately." Elena's jaw tightened. The Hexians were an insect-like species known for their cold logic. They saw charity as weakness. They believed every species should be strong enough to handle their own problems. "He can think whatever he wants," Elena said. "We're not doing this for praise. We're doing it because it's right." That was the human way. 43 years ago, Earth had made first contact with the Galactic Council. The aliens had been surprised by humanity. They had expected humans to be aggressive, violent, dangerous. Earth's history was full of wars, after all. Every species in the galaxy knew about humanity's bloody past, but the humans who joined the Council had chosen a different path. They had become traitors, diplomats, teachers, and healers. They had helped rebuild worlds after natural disasters. They had mediated disputes between warring species. They had opened their universities to alien students and their hospitals to alien patients. The galaxy had relaxed. Humans were peaceful, they decided. Humans were soft. Humans could be ignored when convenient. Elena knew better. She had served in the Earth Defense Force before joining the civilian fleet. She knew what humanity kept hidden in the shadows. She knew about the shipyards disguised as mining stations, about the weapons platforms hidden in asteroid fields, about the secret protocols that every human captain carried in a sealed file, but she hoped those protocols would never need to be used. An alarm beeped softly. Lieutenant Park looked up from her console. "Captain, we're approaching the Theta Virtus system." "We'll be in orbit in 20 minutes. "Good," Elena said. "Signal the convoy." Everyone enters orbit together. Medical teams prepare for immediate deployment. The bridge became busy with activity. Officers checked and rechecked their systems. In the cargo holds, doctors prepared their equipment. Engineers tested the portable generators one last time. Everyone knew their job. Everyone was ready. Elena opened a channel to the entire convoy. "All ships, this is Captain Vasquez. In a few minutes, we're going to enter orbit around a dying world. We're going to see things that will break our hearts. We're going to work until we can't stand up. And we're going to save every life we possibly can. That's what humans do. That's who we are. I'm proud to serve with all of you. Responses came back from 11 ships. Words of determination. Words of courage. The convoy moved forward as one. Ambassador Korath's face appeared on the main screen. The Verdesian looked exhausted but hopeful. Captain Vasquez, we've been tracking your approach. I don't know how to thank you. You can thank us by helping us coordinate the relief effort, Elena said warmly. We'll need your knowledge of your planet's geography and population centers. Where should we start? Korath pulled up a map. Red dots covered the surface, each one marking a settlement in trouble. The capital city has 3 million people. Their situation is the worst. But there are hundreds of smaller towns. We'll get to all of them, Elena promised. We brought enough supplies for everyone. She meant it. The convoy's cargo holds were packed with enough equipment to power and feed every Verdesian on the planet for months. Humanity had stripped supplies from a dozen colonies to make this mission possible. Some humans had gone without so that aliens they had never met could survive. The Compassion shuddered slightly as it entered orbit. Through the main window, Elena could see Theta Verdis below. It was a beautiful world, with blue oceans and green continents. But she could also see the dark cities, the smoke rising from fires, the complete absence of lights. Sir, Lieutenant Park said, her voice suddenly tight. I'm picking up something odd. There are ships here, 12 of them. Military configuration. They're decloaking. Elena's blood went cold. Identification? Krathik's Dominion, Park said. They're powering weapons. Before Elena could respond, her communication console lit up. A harsh reptilian face appeared on screen. The Krathiks had scales like dark metal and eyes like yellow fire. Human vessels, the alien said, its voice full of contempt. I am Commander Vexthor of the Krathiks Dominion. Your supplies are now our property. Power down your shields and prepare to be boarded. Elena's hand moved to the emergency beacon hidden under her command console. This is a humanitarian convoy under Galactic Council protection. We are unarmed. We are here to provide medical assistance to the Verdesian people. Vexthor's laugh was like breaking glass. Your weakness is your extinction, human. The communication cut off. A second later, the universe turned to fire. The first missile hit the UNES Hope, one of the smaller medical ships in the convoy. The ship simply vanished in a ball of white fire. 300 doctors and nurses died in an instant. They never had time to scream. Captain Elena Vasquez gripped her command chair as the Compassion's shields flared bright blue under weapons fire. The Krathik's warships surrounded the convoy like predators circling wounded prey. Red energy beams cut through the darkness of space, tearing into the unarmed human vessels. Return fire, Lieutenant Park shouted. We can't, Elena shouted back. We have no weapons. Evasive maneuvers. Get us out of their firing solution. But the Compassion was a cargo hauler, not a warship. It was big and slow and filled with medical supplies instead of armor plating. The Krathiks knew this. They had chosen their target carefully. Another human ship exploded. Then another. The communication channels filled with screams and emergency signals. Elena watched in horror as the Unis Mercy took a direct hit to its engine core. The ship broke in half. Escape pods launched, tiny white specks against the black. The Krathiks shot them down one by one. They were killing everyone. Even the survivors, Captain. Dr. Chen stumbled onto the bridge, his face bleeding from where he had hit a wall during an impact. What's happening? We're under attack, Elena said, fighting to keep her voice steady. Get back to the medical bay. Seal the pressure doors. Take everyone you can fit, but now, James. That's an order. The doctor ran. Elena hoped he would make it. She hoped someone would survive to tell what happened here. The Compassion shook violently. Sparks exploded from control panels across the bridge. Lieutenant Park's console went dark. Half the lights went out. Hull breach on decks 3 through 7, an officer shouted. Life support failing. Elena's fingers flew across her command console, accessing the emergency protocols. Every human captain carried a sealed file, orders that were only to be opened in the worst possible situation. She had never thought she would need to open hers. She opened it now. Inside was a single button labeled, Emergency Beacon, War Protocols. Elena slammed her hand down on it. A signal burst out from the Compassion, faster than light. encoded with humanity's most advanced encryption. It would reach Earth in minutes. It would tell them everything. It would show them the live footage from the Compassion's external cameras. It would show Earth what was happening to its children. Commander Vex Thor's face appeared on Elena's screen again. The Krathix's yellow eyes gleamed with satisfaction. "Your ship is dead, human. You should have surrendered when you had the chance." "We came here to help," Elena said, tasting blood in her mouth. Something was broken inside her chest. "We came to save lives. We are doctors. We are healers. We have no weapons. That is why you die," Vex Thor said. "The weak have no place in this galaxy. Consider this a lesson for your pathetic species." The communication cut off again. Fire bloomed along the Compassion's hull. Elena felt the ship dying around her. The bridge crew worked frantically, but it was no use. Main power was gone. The engines were offline. The shields had failed. She opened the internal communication channel. "This is the captain. All hands abandon ship. Get to the escape pods. Get to—" An explosion cut her off. The blast threw her across the bridge. She hit a wall and felt her arm snap. Pain washed over her in waves. Through blurry vision, she could see the emergency display. Of the 12 ships in the convoy, only 4 were still intact. The others were debris fields now, scattered across the orbit of Theta Virtus. 14,000 humans had been alive 5 minutes ago. Now most of them were dead. Elena crawled to her console. She had to make sure the beacon was still transmitting. Earth needed to see this. Earth needed to know. The display showed the beacon was active. Good. The footage was being broadcast on all frequencies, including the Galactic Council's emergency channels. The whole galaxy would see what the Krathix had done. She hoped it mattered. Deep in the ship, Dr. Chen had reached the medical bay. He had managed to seal the pressure doors just before the hull breach reached their section. 200 people were crammed into a space meant for 50. Medical personnel, engineers, supply officers, even a few Verdesian refugees they had picked up from an escape shuttle. "Is everyone inside?" James shouted. "Doors sealed," someone answered. The medical bay still had power, still had air, but they all knew it was temporary. The rest of the ship was dying. Soon their section would too. James looked at the frightened faces around him. These were good people. They had volunteered to cross the galaxy to help strangers. They had given up their time, their comfort, their safety, and now they would die because someone evil had decided to attack them. It wasn't fair. A young nurse named Maria was crying quietly in the corner. She was 23 years old. This was her first mission. James sat down beside her and took her hand. "I'm scared," Maria whispered. "Me too," James admitted. Around them, other people began to hold hands. Someone started singing softly. It was an old Earth song, a simple melody about hope and home. Others joined in. Even the Verdesian refugees hummed along, not knowing the words but understanding the meaning. In the cold darkness, surrounded by enemies, the humans sang "On Earth" in the massive Security Council chamber in Geneva. 50 people watched the live broadcast in complete silence. They saw the attacks. They saw the ships exploding. They saw the escape pods being destroyed. They heard Commander Vex Thor's words about weakness and extinction. They saw everything. Admiral Sarah Mitchell stood at the head of the table. Her face showed no emotion, but her hands were clenched so tight her knuckles were white. Around her, the representatives of Earth's nations sat frozen in their seats. The broadcast continued. They watched the medical bay, where 200 people sang as their air ran out. They heard the children's voices. They saw Dr. Chen holding Maria's hand as the lights began to flicker and fade. The singing stopped. The transmission ended. For 90 seconds, nobody in the Security Council chamber moved. Nobody spoke. They simply sat in the terrible silence, processing what they had witnessed. Then Admiral Mitchell stood. She walked to the center of the room and placed her hand on a red panel that had been installed on the first day humanity had joined the Galactic Council, a panel that had never been touched in 43 years. She looked at each representative in turn. "I'm invoking Article 7 of the Earth Defense Charter. We have witnessed an unprovoked attack on a humanitarian convoy. 14,000 civilians are dead or dying. I am requesting authorization to activate the war protocols." The Chinese representative stood. "Granted." The American representative stood. "Granted." One by one, every representative rose and spoke the same word. In less than a minute, it was done. Admiral Mitchell pressed the panel. Across Earth, across every human colony, across every human station in space, alarms began to sound. Not emergency alarms, war alarms. Mitchell's voice was broadcast to every human in the galaxy. This is Admiral Sarah Mitchell, Earth Defense Force Commander. 43 years ago, we chose peace. We chose to be friends to the galaxy. Today, someone attacked our doctors, our nurses, our engineers. People who came to help. People who carried nothing but medicine and hope. They killed our children, and they laughed while doing it. We will not debate this. We will not form committees. We will not issue statements. We will act. Activate the war protocols. Prepare for immediate deployment. The Krathix Dominion has declared war on humanity. We will finish it. The transmission ended. In secret shipyards hidden throughout the Sol system, massive doors began to open. The Galactic Council chamber was in chaos. Representatives from 200 species shouted at each other, their translation devices barely able to keep up. On the massive display screens, footage of the Theta Verdis massacre played on repeat. Ambassador Korath, the Verdizian, stood in the center of the chamber with tears streaming down his blue face. "They came to help us," he said, his voice breaking. "The humans came to save my people, and the Krathix murdered them. 14,000 souls extinguished in minutes." The Hexian ambassador clicked his mandibles dismissively. "A tragic accident, certainly, but accident?" Korath's voice turned to a roar. "They shot down the escape pods. They targeted the medical vessels." "There was no accident." The council president, a tall, gray-skinned Peltharian named Suvak, raised his 6 arms for silence. "We must approach this rationally. We should form an investigation committee, perhaps economic sanctions against the Krathix." The human observer's booth had been empty since the attack. Earth had recalled its ambassadors. But now the door opened. Admiral Sarah Mitchell walked in wearing her full military uniform. Behind her marched 20 human officers, all in combat gear. They moved with perfect precision, their boots striking the floor in unison. Every conversation stopped. Mitchell walked to the center of the chamber and looked up at President Suvak. "The investigation is over. We know who attacked us, we know why, and we know what we're going to do about it." "Admiral," Suvak said carefully, "I understand your anger, but we must follow proper procedures." "Procedures?" Mitchell's laugh was cold. "We followed your procedures. For 43 years we followed every rule, every protocol, every piece of bureaucratic nonsense you created. We asked for permission to defend our ships. You said no. We asked for military escorts for our medical convoys. You said it would be too aggressive. We followed your rules and our children died because of it." She pulled out a data pad and threw it onto the council floor. It projected a hologram into the air, showing Commander Vexthor's message. His voice filled the chamber. "Your weakness is your extinction, human." "That," Mitchell said quietly, "was their mistake. They thought kindness meant weakness. They thought because we chose peace we had forgotten how to make war. They were wrong." She pressed a button on her wrist communicator. The chamber's external windows suddenly filled with ships, hundreds of them. They appeared from nowhere, dropping out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation around the council station. The alien representatives rushed to the windows, staring in shock. 500 warships, Mitchell said calmly. "That's 1st, 2nd, and 3rd Fleet. Another 1,000 are being activated as we speak. We built them in secret over the past 40 years. You thought they were mining stations and cargo facilities. You were meant to." The Hexian ambassador's voice was shrill with shock. "This violates the Military Limitation Treaty. You agreed to maintain only a small defensive force." "We maintained a defensive force," Mitchell agreed. "But we never stopped being prepared. Every human learns our history.
We know what happens to the unprepared.
We know what happens to the weak. So we built these ships and we hid them, and we prayed we'd never need to use them." She turned back to President Suvak. "We are informing the Council, not asking permission. Earth is formally requesting the surrender of Commander Vexithor and all Krathix officers involved in the Theta Verdis attack. They will be tried for murder, for war crimes, and for crimes against sapient beings." "And if the Krathix refuse?" Suvak asked. "Then we go to war." "You cannot be serious," the Hexian ambassador said. "The Krathix Dominion has over 500 worlds. They have the 3rd largest military in the galaxy. You are one species. We are one species that conquered our own planet before we could even leave it." Mitchell interrupted. We fought wars with rocks and sticks, with swords and spears, with guns and bombs and nuclear fire. We nearly destroyed ourselves a dozen times. We know war better than any species in this chamber. We studied it. We perfected it. And then we locked it away, hoping we'd never need it again. She pulled up another hologram, this one showing technical specifications. The alien representatives leaned forward, trying to understand what they were seeing. Kinetic bombardment systems, Mitchell explained. Magnetic accelerators that can throw a slug of metal at a significant fraction of light speed. No explosives needed, just mass and velocity. One projectile can level a city. We have thousands of them. She switched to another display. Plasma lance batteries. They cut through shields like paper. Kasaba howitzer nuclear-pumped lasers. Electronic warfare systems that can blind your sensors from a light year away. And these are just the weapons we're willing to tell you about. The chamber was completely silent. You want to know the funny thing? Mitchell said. We didn't design any of this using your technology. We built it all from our own research, our own science. You gave us faster-than-light travel and artificial gravity. Thank you for that. But the weapons? Those are pure human engineering, based on principles we developed centuries ago, when we were still killing each other over patches of dirt. President Suvak's voice was quiet. What are your terms? Simple. The Krathix government has 24 hours to surrender every individual involved in the Theta Virtus attack. If they comply, we will accept their surrender and try the criminals under Galactic law. If they refuse, Mitchell let the sentence hang. If they refuse, you will attack? If they refuse, we will end them, Mitchell corrected. Not their people, not their civilians, but their government, their military, their ability to ever threaten another peaceful mission. We will dismantle their empire piece by piece until they beg to give us what we want. She turned to leave, her officers following. At the door, she paused and looked back. For 43 years, you knew humanity's history. You knew we came from a world of war. You knew we were dangerous, but you thought we had gone soft. You thought we had forgotten who we were. That was your mistake. We didn't forget. We just chose to be better. But when you murder our innocence, when you laugh at our kindness, you remind us of what we can be when we stop being civilized. She left. The doors closed behind her. In the Krathix capital, news of Earth's ultimatum reached Emperor Drask within the hour. The ruler of the Krathix dominion was ancient, his scales marked with the scars of 100 battles. He had led his people to conquer 40 worlds. He had defeated species that the Galactic Council had considered unbeatable. He watched the footage of the human fleet and laughed. 500 ships, he hissed to his advisors. The humans think 500 ships can threaten us? We have 20,000 warships. We have defended our territory for 800 years. Let them come. He dictated his response personally. To the humans of Earth, we reject your demands. Commander Vex Thor acted within his authority to claim resources for the Dominion. If you want him, come and take him. We will be waiting. The message was broadcast across the galaxy. The Galactic Council held an emergency session, debating what to do. Some species called for intervention. Others argued for neutrality. The Hexians proposed economic sanctions on both sides. While they argued, Earth acted. Admiral Mitchell stood on the bridge of the UNES Retribution, the flagship of First Fleet. Around her, 200 warships moved in perfect formation. They had launched from Earth orbit 10 minutes after the Theta Virtus attack. They had been in faster-than-light travel for 3 days while the politicians talked. They were done talking. Navigation, Mitchell said calmly. Set course for Krathix Prime. Maximum speed. All ships are weapons-free upon arrival. Yes, sir, the navigation officer responded. The fleet jumped to faster-than-light, disappearing from the edge of Council space. They would reach the Krathix homeworld in 4 days. On Earth, parents held their children close and prayed. Soldiers boarded ships and prepared for war. Engineers worked around the clock, building more weapons, more ammunition, more tools for the terrible work ahead. And in every human heart, a single question burned. How dare they attack our healers? The galaxy was about to learn the answer. The first Krathix ships detected the human fleet at the edge of their home system. 20 massive warships moved to intercept, their commanders confident. These were veteran crews. They had fought in 100 battles. They lasted 17 minutes. The human ships didn't slow down. They didn't try to talk. They simply opened fire from maximum range with weapons the Krathix had never seen before. Magnetic accelerators launched metal slugs at speeds that made them invisible. By the time the Krathix sensors detected the projectiles, they had already hit. 3 Krathix battleships exploded. The others tried to scatter, but the humans were faster. Plasma lances cut through their shields like hot knives through butter. Electronic warfare systems blinded their targeting computers. In minutes, all 20 ships were destroyed or disabled. Not a single human ship took damage. Admiral Mitchell watched from the Retribution's bridge as her fleet swept through the outer system. "Target all orbital infrastructure," she ordered. Weapons platforms, shipyards, defense stations, communication satellites. Everything in orbit gets destroyed. Nothing on the ground gets touched. The fleet split into hunting groups. They moved through Krathix space like a storm, precise and unstoppable. Every military installation in orbit vanished in fire and metal. The Krathix tried to fight back, but their weapons couldn't hit the fast-moving human ships. Their missiles were shot down. Their energy beams missed by kilometers. Within 6 hours, Krathix Prime was cut off from space. No ships could launch. No supplies could arrive. The planet was locked down. "Open a broadcast to the surface," Mitchell said. "All channels." Her face appeared on every screen on the planet. 40 billion Krathix watched as she spoke. "People of Krathix Prime, this is Admiral Sarah Mitchell of Earth. We did not want this war. Your leaders chose it when they murdered our medical personnel. We are not here to kill you. We are here to bring justice. Surrender Commander Vexthor and his officers, and this ends today. Refuse, and we will dismantle your empire piece by piece until you have nothing left but regret." Emperor Drask's response was defiant. He appeared on the same channels, his old scales bristling with anger. "The Krathix do not surrender. We do not bow to threats. Our military will crush these humans and scatter their bones." Mitchell sighed. She had hoped they would be smart. They weren't. "Second Fleet," she said into her communicator. "You are cleared to proceed to target systems. Begin Operation Stranglehold." Across Krathix space, 300 human ships appeared at 12 different worlds. They ignored the planets themselves. Instead, they targeted infrastructure. Transportation hubs, spaceports, orbital elevators, communication networks. The Krathix had built their empire on complex supply chains. Food from agricultural worlds fed industrial worlds. Resources from mining colonies supplied manufacturing centers. It was efficient when everything worked. The humans broke it. On Krathi 7, kinetic strikes destroyed every major spaceport. The planet's 40 million Krathix were unharmed, but they couldn't receive food shipments from off-world anymore. On Krathix 12, plasma lances cut through the orbital elevator cables. The massive structures fell like broken threads, taking the planet's primary means of reaching space with them. Week 1 ended with the Krathix military in chaos. They had lost 300 ships and couldn't replace them. Their shipyards were debris. Their planets were isolated from each other, and the humans hadn't lost a single vessel. Emperor Drask called his generals together. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "We have the numbers. We have the firepower." The oldest general, a female named Kresh, spoke carefully. "They're not fighting like soldiers, my emperor. They're fighting like hunters. They strike from nowhere, hit our weak points, and vanish before we can respond. And their ships? They're faster than anything we've ever seen." "Then we need to be smarter," Drask said. "Begin Operation Civilian Shield. Fill our transport ships with civilians and use them to deliver our troops. The humans won't fire on civilian vessels." Kresh looked uncomfortable. "My emperor, that violates the rules of war." "The humans broke those rules when they attacked us," Drask growled. He was wrong about that. The humans hadn't attacked first. But at this point he couldn't admit it. He had told his people they would win. He had promised them victory. Now he needed to deliver, no matter the cost. Week 2 began with Krathix transport ships filled with civilians trying to break through the human blockades. The ships broadcast constantly, showing the innocent people aboard. Families with children, elderly individuals, all of them scared. Admiral Mitchell watched the approaching transports and felt sick. "Scan them. Confirming weapon signatures aboard all vessels," her tactical officer reported. "They're using the civilians as shields for troop transports." Mitchell's face went hard. "Broadcast this on all frequencies. Every channel. I want the whole galaxy to see what the Krathix government is doing to its own people." The footage went out across space. The galaxy watched as the Krathix military hid behind their own civilians. Outrage erupted across the Galactic Council. And the humans didn't blink, they didn't fire on the civilian ships. Instead, they used their electronic warfare systems to hack the ship's controls. One by one, the transports lost power and went adrift. Human boarding parties moving in powered armor secured each ship. They separated the civilians from the soldiers. The civilians were given food and water and placed in safety. The soldiers were taken prisoner. The operation took 12 hours. Not a single civilian died. Commander Vexthor, safe in his fortress on a military moon, watched the footage and felt something he had never experienced before. Fear. These humans were not like any enemy he had fought. They were precise. They were patient. And they were completely merciless toward military targets while showing incredible care for civilians. He started to understand that he had made a terrible mistake. By week 3, the Krathix people were hungry. Food shipments had stopped. Power was intermittent. Water supplies were running low. None of this was because the humans had destroyed civilian infrastructure. It was because the Krathix government had built everything to depend on space-based logistics, and the humans controlled space. Protests began on Krathix Prime. Citizens demanded answers. Why were they suffering? Why was the war continuing? Why wouldn't the government just hand over the criminals who had started this? Emperor Drask tried to maintain control. He sent his police to break up the protests. He shut down communication networks to stop people from organizing. It didn't work. The humans helped with that too. They began broadcasting directly to personal devices on every Krathix world, showing footage of what really happened at Theta Virtus. They showed the medical ships being destroyed. They showed the escape pods being targeted. They showed Commander Vexthor laughing about weakness and extinction. The Krathix people realized their government had started a war by murdering healers, and now they were suffering for that decision. The protests turned into riots. The riots turned into revolution. On the military moon where Vexthor had hidden, his own officers came for him. They were tired. They were ashamed. And they knew this war was lost. You brought this on us, General Kresh said as her soldiers placed Vexthor in restraints. You murdered peaceful people and brought hell down on our heads. Now you'll face justice for it. She contacted Admiral Mitchell directly. We are surrendering Commander Vexthor and all officers involved in the Theta Virtus massacre. We are also offering the unconditional surrender of our military. Please, no more. Our people are starving. Mitchell's response was immediate. Surrender accepted. All human ships cease fire. Begin relief operations. Get food and medical supplies to the Krathix planets. Prioritize children and the elderly. The war was over. 21 days after it began. The final count. 300 Krathix warships destroyed. 0 human ships lost. Krathix military infrastructure eliminated. Civilian casualties from human actions, 0. Civilian deaths from Krathix government actions during the war, 37,000, mostly from the civilian shield operation. The galaxy watched in stunned silence. Humans had gone to war. They had fought with overwhelming force. They had shown no mercy to military targets. But they had protected every civilian they could, even enemy civilians. They had won completely, decisively, in 3 weeks. And then, the moment they won, they started helping. Within hours of the surrender, human cargo ships arrived at every Krathix world. They carried food, medicine, and power generators. The same supplies that had been meant for Theta Virtus now multiplied 100 times over. Ambassador Korath, watching from the Galactic Council chamber, felt tears roll down his blue face again. But this time they were different tears. They destroyed an empire, he whispered, and then they fed its people. What kind of species does that? The Hexian ambassador for once had no response. The trial was held on Earth in The Hague, the same city where humans had once tried their own war criminals. The Galactic Council had offered to host it, but Admiral Mitchell had refused. They attacked our people, she had said. They'll be judged by our laws. The courtroom was broadcast across every inhabited world in the galaxy. Billions of beings watched as Commander Vexthor and 23 of his officers were brought in wearing restraints. The Krathix looked smaller now, their scales dull, their yellow eyes downcast. The lead prosecutor was a human woman named Sarah Chen. She was Dr. James Chen's daughter. Her father had survived the Theta Virtus massacre barely. He sat in the courtroom's front row, watching. Sarah Chen stood and began to present the evidence. She showed footage of the attack. She displayed the communication logs proving the attack was unprovoked. She brought forward survivors who testified about watching their friends die. She read the names of the dead, all 14,000 of them. It took 6 hours. The courtroom was silent except for her voice and the sound of people crying. Vexthor's defense attorney, a human surprisingly, argued that his client had been following orders, that he had believed the convoy was a military target in disguise, that cultural differences had led to a misunderstanding. The prosecution destroyed every argument. They showed how the ships were clearly marked as medical vessels, how they had broadcast their humanitarian purpose, how they had no weapons, how Vexthor had continued firing even after it was obvious these were civilians. The jury, composed of 6 humans and 6 aliens from neutral species, deliberated for 4 hours. The verdict: guilty on all counts, murder, war crimes, crimes against sapient beings. The judge, an elderly human man who had served in Earth's Defense Force decades ago, delivered the sentence. Commander Vexthor, you and your officers are sentenced to life imprisonment at hard labor. You will spend the rest of your lives rebuilding what you destroyed. You will help reconstruct Theta Virtus. You will restore the lives you tried to end, and every day you will remember the innocent people you killed. Vexthor finally spoke. His voice was quiet, broken. I was wrong. I thought they were weak. I thought kindness was foolishness. I didn't understand that strength and compassion could exist together. I understand now. Too late, but I understand. He was led away. The trial was over. The next day, Admiral Mitchell stood before the Galactic Council to present Earth's terms for peace. The chamber was packed. Every species had sent representatives. They needed to know what humanity wanted. Mitchell stood in the center of the chamber looking up at the hundreds of aliens watching her. She took a breath and began. 3 months ago, the Krathix Dominion attacked a humanitarian convoy. They killed 14,000 humans who had come to help strangers. They laughed at our kindness and called it weakness. Today the Krathix Dominion no longer exists. It has been reorganized as the Krathix Republic, with a civilian government and a military limited to defensive purposes only. She pulled up a holographic display showing the new Krathix government structure. The Republic has agreed to pay reparations to Theta Virtus and to the families of every human who died. They have agreed to allow human peacekeeping forces to remain in their space for the next 20 years. They have agreed to demilitarize and to never again threaten peaceful missions. President Suvak spoke. These terms seem reasonable. Is this all Earth requires? Not quite, Mitchell said. She pulled up another document. We're also requesting changes to the Galactic Council Charter. First, any attack on a medical convoy from any species will be considered an act of war against the entire Council. Second, humanitarian missions will be authorized to carry military escorts. Third, Earth receives a permanent seat on the Security Council with veto power. Murmurs filled the chamber. The Hexian ambassador stood. You're demanding a seat at the table? After you waged war without council approval? Mitchell turned to face him. We waged war after our healers were murdered. After the council offered nothing but thoughts and prayers. After 43 years of following rules that protected no one. Yes, we want a seat at the table, because clearly, someone needs to remind this council what it's supposed to stand for. And what is that? The Hexian asked coldly. Protection. Justice. The idea that we're better together than apart. That we help each other when disaster strikes. That we don't let murderers hide behind committees and procedures. Mitchell's voice rose. You call us aggressive? We call ourselves protective. For 43 years we played by your rules. We traded, we talked, we helped. We sent our healers to every corner of this galaxy, and when they were murdered you wanted to form an investigation committee. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of as many representatives as she could. You don't understand humanity. We're not aggressive by nature. We're reactive. Push us, we push back. Threaten us, we defend ourselves. But murder our innocent? Kill those who came only to help? That's the line you can never cross, and we didn't want this war. We prepared for it because our history taught us to never be helpless again. But we never wanted it. The Krathix chose violence. We ended it. She pulled up one more display. It showed human ships distributing supplies across Krathix space. Right now our vessels are feeding the same people whose military attacked us. Because that's who we are. We'll destroy your warships without hesitation. but we'll feed your children without question. We'll dismantle your empire, but we'll protect your civilians. That's humanity." The chamber was completely silent. "So let me be very clear about the new understanding," Mitchell continued. "Humanity will remain your partners, your traitors, your friends. We will still come when you call for aid. Our doctors will still volunteer for missions. Our engineers will still help rebuild after disasters, but we will no longer be your victims. Attack our civilians, our healers, our innocents, and we will respond with the full measure of our capability, not with anger, not with hatred, but with absolute certainty and overwhelming force. We are not your enemies, but we are no longer your prey." She finished and stood silent, waiting. President Suvak consulted with the other council leaders. After 10 minutes, he spoke. "The council accepts Earth's terms. Humanity is granted a permanent Security Council seat. The charter amendments will be implemented immediately. But not everyone was happy. Several species that had remained silent during the attack now found their trade agreements under review. The Hexians discovered that human merchants were no longer interested in doing business with them. Other species rushed to offer new treaties, new partnerships, anything to stay in humanity's good graces. The balance of power in the galaxy had shifted. 1 year later, a new station orbited Theta Virtus. It was called the Captain Elena Vasquez Memorial Station, named after the woman who had died trying to help strangers. The station served as both a medical facility and a school, teaching the galaxy's best doctors and nurses. At the dedication ceremony, Ambassador Korath stood with Dr. James Chen. The doctor had stayed on Theta Virtus after the war, helping rebuild. His daughter Sarah had joined him, bringing her own medical expertise. "I still have nightmares," James admitted to Korath, "about the medical bay, about watching the air run out, about thinking I'd never see my daughter again." Korath placed a gentle hand on the human's shoulder. "You gave us our lives, Dr. Chen, all of us. You came when no one else would." Below them, on the planet's surface, Verdizian children played in rebuilt cities. Many of them had been born after the disaster, after the war. They would grow up in a world saved by human kindness and protected by human strength. A new distress call came through to Earth Command. A mining colony on the edge of Council space had suffered a catastrophic system failure. 3,000 beings needed immediate evacuation and medical care. Admiral Mitchell, now officially the Supreme Commander of Earth Defense Forces, reviewed the situation. "Launch the relief fleet. 2 medical ships, full supply loadout. Military escort?" her aide asked. 4 destroyers, Mitchell said without hesitation. "And make sure every ship in that convoy is armed. We help everyone who needs it. But we'll never again send our people out defenseless." The fleet launched within the hour. As it jumped to faster than light speed, a message was broadcast ahead. "Help is coming. Earth responds." Those 3 words had become famous across the galaxy. Earth responds. It meant that if you were in trouble, if disaster struck, if you needed help, humanity would come. They would bring supplies, medicine, expertise, and hope. They would also bring warships. Because the galaxy had learned the truth about humanity. They were the kindest species you could ever meet. They would give everything to help a stranger. They would risk their lives to save someone they'd never met. They would show compassion and mercy even to enemies. But if you attacked their healers, if you murdered their innocence, if you mistook their kindness for weakness, you would learn why humans had once covered their own planet in weapons and fire. You would learn that human compassion and human fury came from the same place. A fierce love of life and an absolute unwillingness to watch the innocent suffer. The strong protect the weak. That was humanity's oldest rule. They protected others, and they protected their own. And in the cold darkness of space, there was no safer friend to have by your side. The council chamber stretched so far that Sarah Chen could not see where it ended. Thousands of aliens sat in curved rows that spiraled upward like a massive stadium. Some had forearms, others had scales that glowed in the dark, and a few floated in tanks of purple liquid. Sarah had stopped trying to count how many different species filled the room. Her translator device buzzed in her ear, turning their strange languages into words she could understand. Sarah sat in the observation box with her small team of 5 humans. They were not allowed to speak. They were not allowed to vote. They could only watch and listen as the most powerful beings in the galaxy decided Earth's future. Ambassador Thelgzara stood at the center platform. She was from the Kryn hegemony, one of the oldest and most respected species in the Galactic Collective. Her skin looked like polished silver, and her 3 eyes never blinked. She held a data pad that glowed with information about Earth. "Members of the Collective," Telxara began, her voice echoing through the chamber. "We gather today to discuss the planet called Earth and its dominant species, humans. Our observation teams have studied them for 300 of their years. The conclusion is clear. They are primitive." Sarah felt her teammate Marcus tense beside her. She put a hand on his arm. Not yet, she thought. Wait. Telxara touched her data pad and a giant hologram appeared above the chamber. It showed Earth's solar system, then zoomed in to show human cities, rockets, and satellites. "Observe their technology," Telxara continued. "They still burn chemicals to achieve spaceflight. They have not mastered quantum entanglement for communication. Their fastest ships would take tens of thousands of years to reach even the nearest star. By our standards, they are children playing with fire." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Some aliens made sounds that Sarah's translator could not interpret, but she understood the tone. They were laughing. "There is more," Telxara said. "They are not unified. Earth is divided into 196 separate nations. These nations compete with each other. They sometimes fight wars over resources and territory. How can we welcome a species into the collective when they cannot even achieve peace among themselves?" A large alien with tentacles raised one appendage. "What do you propose, Ambassador?" "Quarantine," Telxara answered firmly. "We seal Earth's solar system from all galactic contact. We let them develop naturally. In perhaps 500 years, if they survive their own conflicts and advance their technology, we can revisit this question. Until then, they remain isolated." Sarah watched as the voting began. On the massive display above, numbers started to appear. Green for yes, red for no. The green numbers climbed rapidly. Out of 847 species in the collective, more than 700 had already voted for quarantine. "This is it," whispered James, another member of Sarah's team. "They're locking us out." Sarah checked the small device on her wrist. She looked at her team. They all nodded. They had rehearsed this moment for 2 years. Every possibility had been considered. Every word had been practiced. But now that it was here, Sarah felt her heart pounding. The vote reached 793 green, only 47 red. The decision was nearly final. Sarah stood up. The movement was small, but in the observation box where humans were supposed to sit silently, it was shocking. Thousands of alien eyes turned toward her. The chamber fell silent. Even Telxara stopped speaking and stared. "Forgive the interruption," Sarah said. Her voice shook slightly, but she kept it steady. The translator device would carry her words to every being in the room. "Before you finalize that decision, there is something you should know about humanity." Telxara's 3 eyes narrowed. "You were granted permission to observe, not to speak. The decision is made." "The decision is based on incomplete information," Sarah replied. She walked down from the observation box toward the center platform. Security drones hummed to life around her, but they did not stop her. The council wanted to hear what this primitive human could possibly say. Sarah reached the platform and stood beside Telxara. She pulled out a small device from her pocket. It looked like a simple black cube. "You believe we are primitive?" Sarah said, addressing the entire chamber. "You have watched us for 300 years. You have seen our chemical rockets and our divided nations. You have concluded that we are not ready to join you." "That is correct," Telxara said coldly. "You are right about what you saw," Sarah continued. "But you are wrong about what it means. You measured our technology by what we showed you. You never asked what we chose to hide." Sarah activated the cube. A new hologram exploded into existence above the chamber. This one did not show Earth cities or primitive rockets. It showed something else entirely. Mathematical equations filled the air. 3-dimensional models of space-time twisted and folded in ways that made several aliens gasp. Energy signatures pulsed in colors that should not exist. At the center of it all was a structure so complex that it seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once. "What is this?" demanded a voice from the council. "This," Sarah said, "is the dimensional arc, and it is proof that humanity has never been as primitive as you believed." The chamber erupted into chaos. Aliens shouted in hundreds of languages. The translator in Sarah's ear buzzed frantically, trying to keep up. Telxara stared at the hologram. her silver skin darkening with what Sarah had learned was a sign of shock. Impossible, Thelxara whispered. These equations, this technology, it would require understanding of dimensional physics that even we have not fully mastered. We know, Sarah said quietly. We have been working on it for 80 years. 80 years? Thelxara turned to face Sarah fully. Your species only achieved spaceflight 70 years ago. You expect us to believe that you developed dimensional technology in secret while we watched you? Sarah met her three-eyed gaze steadily. Yes, because we had to. Because in every future we calculated, revealing ourselves too early meant either suppression or slavery. We learned from our own history. The strong do not always welcome the different. They often try to control it. Thelxara was silent for a long moment. Around them, the council chamber was still in chaos. Finally, she spoke. If what you show is real, then everything we know about humanity is wrong. Not wrong, Sarah corrected. Incomplete. You saw what we wanted you to see. We showed you chemical rockets because they were safe to show. We showed you divided nations because unity can be built in secret when the stakes are high enough. We showed you primitives because we needed time to finish what we started. And what exactly did you start? Thelxara asked. Sarah looked up at the hologram of the dimensional arc. We started building a lifeboat. Because there is a storm coming, Ambassador. A storm that will destroy everything you have built, and we are the only ones who saw it coming. The council chamber fell silent. Every alien stared at Sarah Chen, the human who was supposed to be primitive, the human who had just revealed that everything they thought they knew was a carefully constructed lie. I think, Sarah said softly, you need to hear the rest of the story. The Galactic Council gave Sarah 1 hour to present her case. She stood at the center platform with her team around her. The hologram display had been expanded so every member of the council could see clearly. I need to start with a date, Sarah began. July 1947. A location called Roswell in the territory of New Mexico on Earth. Many aliens in the chamber shifted. Even among the stars, the Roswell incident was known. It was often used as an example of human paranoia and primitive thinking. You know the story, Sarah continued. Something crashed in the desert. The human government said it was a weather balloon. For decades, many humans believed it was an alien spacecraft. Both explanations were wrong. Sarah activated a new hologram. It showed a desert landscape and a piece of twisted metal half buried in sand. But this metal was strange. It seemed to flicker as if it could not decide whether to exist or not. What crashed at Roswell was not alien, Sarah said. It was human. It was a probe sent back through time from our own future. The council chamber erupted again. Time travel was considered impossible by most species. A few had achieved it in theory, but the energy requirements were too massive. And the paradoxes were too dangerous. Thelxara held up one hand for silence. Time travel is forbidden under collective law. If humanity has broken this law, we didn't break it, Sarah interrupted. We haven't achieved time travel yet. But we will. The probe came from approximately 200 years in our future. It carried a message. And that message changed everything. She touched the display and a document appeared. It was written in English, but the translation systems made it readable to all species. The message was simple, Sarah said. It was a warning. In every timeline where humanity joins the Galactic Collective as a junior member, Earth is destroyed within 150 years. The destruction comes from an interdimensional war. A war that has not started yet. A war that you do not know is coming. The council was silent now. Every eye was fixed on Sarah. The probe's database contained detailed records, Sarah continued. 53 different timelines. In every single one, humanity followed the expected path. We revealed ourselves when we developed faster than light travel. We joined the collective as students, learning from species more advanced than us. We became a minor member, grateful for the chance to be part of something greater. Sarah's voice grew harder, and in every timeline it led to our extinction. Because the war came and we were not ready. Because we had relied on you instead of developing our own strengths. Because we were so busy trying to catch up to your level that we never explored the directions you had not looked. She pulled up another hologram. This one showed Earth burning. Cities collapsed. Oceans boiled. Reality itself seemed to tear apart like paper. This is what happens in those timelines, Sarah said quietly. The null cascade arrives. The dimensional structure of space-time fails. And worlds simply stop existing. An alien with crystalline features spoke up. His voice sounded like breaking glass. You are claiming that we face an interdimensional collapse? This is fantasy. We have instruments that monitor dimensional stability. We would know. Sarah nodded to Marcus, who stepped forward. Your instruments monitor the standard dimensional frequencies, he said. The 17 dimensions that quantum physics predicts. You have never looked beyond those because your mathematics told you nothing else exists. Marcus activated his own display. Equations filled the air. They were similar to the ones the collective used, but with additional variables. Symbols that made no sense to most of the watching aliens. Human mathematics developed differently, Marcus explained. We were fractured into many nations, many schools of thought. Chinese mathematics, Indian mathematics, European mathematics, African mathematics. Each approach was slightly different. When we finally unified our knowledge, we discovered something you missed. There are not 17 dimensions. There are 23. The crystalline alien leaned forward. Prove it, Marcus smiled. He pulled out a device and activated it. Suddenly, a small sphere appeared floating in the air. It was there, but also not there. It existed in a way that hurt to look at. This sphere exists partially in the 21st dimension, Marcus said. Your instruments cannot detect it because they are not calibrated for frequencies that your mathematics say should not exist. He deactivated the device and the sphere vanished. The null cascade is happening in those hidden dimensions. By the time it reaches the dimensions you can measure, it will be too late to stop. Thelxara's silver skin had gone pale. How long do we have? Sarah took a deep breath. 30 years. Maybe less. The council chamber exploded into panic. Aliens shouted. Some called for Sarah to be arrested for spreading fear. Others demanded to see more proof. The noise was deafening. Sarah waited. She had expected this reaction. Finally, when the chaos began to settle, she spoke again. After we received the probe in 1947, we had a choice to make. We could warn you immediately. We could beg for your help. We could hope that together we could find a solution. She paused. But the probe's data showed us what happens when we do that. In 12 of the 53 timelines, we warned you early. In 8 of those timelines, you dismissed us as primitive and ignored the warning. In 3 timelines, you tried to suppress our knowledge because it challenged your understanding of physics. In 1 timeline, you tried to take our research by force. Thelxara looked uncomfortable. We would never— You would, Sarah said firmly. Not you personally, Ambassador. But species in the collective who could not accept that primitives had discovered something they missed. Species who saw knowledge as power and wanted to control it. Sarah walked around the platform as she spoke. So we made a different choice. We decided to develop the solution ourselves. In secret, we created the ARC Initiative. Every major government on Earth was brought into the conspiracy. Scientists were recruited. Facilities were built underground, underwater, in places where your observation satellites could not see. She gestured to the hologram of the dimensional arc. For 80 years, while you watched us play with chemical rockets, we were building this, the greatest collaborative effort in human history. All of our nations, all of our conflicts, all of our competition. It was real, but it was also cover. We needed you to think we were primitive. We needed you to ignore us, because we needed time. Time for what? Asked an alien with tentacles. Time to build a lifeboat for reality itself, Sarah answered. The dimensional arc is not a ship. It is not a weapon. It is a pocket dimension, a place where matter and energy can exist even if the normal dimensions collapse. It can hold billions of individuals, entire ecosystems, complete genetic databases, every piece of knowledge and culture we can gather. She turned to face Thelxara directly. We built it to save ourselves. But we built it large enough to save all of you too. Thelxara was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. Why would you save us? If we ignored you in other timelines. If we suppressed you. Why help us now? Sarah smiled sadly. Because in those other timelines we revealed ourselves when we were weak. When we needed you more than you needed us. This time we waited. We finished the arc. We came to you when we had something valuable to offer. Not as beggars, but as equals. She looked around at the council. We are offering you a partnership. We will share the ARC technology. We will work together to expand it, to improve it, to save as many species and worlds as possible before the cascade arrives. But it will be a partnership of equals. Earth will not be a protectorate. Humanity will not be a junior member. We stand with you or we stand alone. The chamber was silent. Sarah could feel the weight of thousands of eyes on her. Finally, Thelgzara spoke. You have given us much to consider. The Council must debate this. We must verify your claims. We must decide if we trust you. Of course, Sarah said. Take all the time you need. But remember, Ambassador, the clock is counting down, and we are the only ones who know how to build a lifeboat big enough for everyone. 3 days passed while the Galactic Council reviewed Sarah's evidence. Teams of alien scientists examined the data from the probe. They tested Marcus's dimensional detector. They ran simulations using the expanded mathematics that humanity had discovered. Sarah and her team waited in quarters assigned to them. The rooms were comfortable but clearly designed for surveillance. They knew every word was being recorded. Every action was being watched. On the morning of the 4th day, Thelgzara came to their quarters personally. The Council has reviewed your claims, she said. Her 3 eyes looked tired and her silver skin had lost some of its shine. Our scientists have confirmed the existence of the additional dimensions you described. They have detected the early signatures of what you call the null cascade. Sarah stood up slowly. You believe us. We have no choice but to believe you, Thelgzara replied. The evidence is undeniable. The mathematics work. The cascade is real. She paused. We have been blind. For thousands of years we thought we understood the universe, and now we discover that we missed something so fundamental that it will destroy us. You were not blind, Sarah said gently. You were focused. Your mathematics worked for everything you needed. You had no reason to look beyond them. Humanity only looked further because we approached the problem from many different angles. Our division became our strength, Thelgzara nodded slowly. The Council wishes to see more. They have voted to send a delegation to Earth, to witness the dimensional arc in person, to verify that it is real and functional. Of course, Sarah agreed. When do we leave? Immediately. The journey to Earth took 6 days aboard a collective vessel. The delegation included Thelgzara, 15 scientists from different species, and a security team. They were all sworn to secrecy. If the null cascade became public knowledge before preparations were made, panic would spread across the galaxy. During the journey, Sarah provided more details about the ARC initiative. She showed them records of human collaboration, secret meetings between governments that were publicly hostile to each other, scientists from rival nations working together in hidden facilities, resources diverted from military projects to fund the construction of the ARC. Your species managed to keep this secret for 80 years? Asked one scientist, a being made of flowing energy contained in a suit. How is that possible when you are so divided? Because we had a common threat, Sarah explained. When humans face extinction, we can accomplish remarkable things. Besides, keeping secrets is something humans are quite good at. We have had practice. They arrived at Earth on a cloudy Tuesday. The delegation's ship did not land on the surface. Instead, it descended into the Pacific Ocean, diving deeper than any collective vessel had gone before. The pressure should have crushed any structure, but the ship's shields held. At a depth of 15 kilometers, they reached a point where the ocean floor simply was not there. Instead, there was a shimmer in the water like heat waves rising from hot pavement. This is the entrance, Sarah said. The arc exists partially in normal space and partially in a pocket dimension. What you are seeing is the threshold. The ship passed through the shimmer and suddenly everything changed. The delegation stared in shock at what lay before them. The dimensional arc was vast beyond comprehension. It looked like a city, but also like a living organism, but also like a mathematical equation made solid. Structures spiraled in directions that should not exist. Chambers expanded into spaces larger than they should be able to contain. Lights pulsed in rhythms that seemed to exist outside of normal time. By the ancients, whispered Thelgzara. It is real, Sarah smiled. Would you like a tour? They spent hours exploring the arc. Sarah showed them the residential sectors where billions of individuals could live comfortably. She showed them the biological preservation chambers, where complete ecosystems could be stored in stasis. She showed them the knowledge archives where the sum total of human culture and science was being recorded. But the most impressive demonstration came in a chamber that the delegation had not expected. Sarah led them to a large hall filled with transparent cylinders. Inside each cylinder was an animal. Some the aliens recognized as extinct Earth species, others they had never seen before. This is our restoration project, Sarah explained. These are animals that went extinct on Earth in the past. We used preserved DNA to bring them back. Not to put them back in the wild, but to prove that the Ark's biological systems work. She pointed to a large cylinder containing a massive furry creature with long tusks. That is a woolly mammoth. Extinct for 4,000 years. We brought it back. It is healthy. It is alive. This is proof that we can preserve and restore life even after it has been lost. The energy being scientist floated closer to the cylinders. This technology, it could save species across the galaxy. Planets that have lost biodiversity. Worlds that have suffered environmental collapse. This is revolutionary. That is the point, Sarah said. The Ark is not just about surviving the null cascade. It is about preserving everything worth saving. Culture, knowledge, life itself. When the cascade passes, we will still have everything we need to rebuild. Thelzara turned to Sarah with a question that had clearly been troubling her. You said the Ark is large enough for billions, but there are trillions of beings in the collective. How do you choose who to save? Sarah's expression grew somber. We cannot save everyone. That is the terrible truth we have lived with since we discovered the probe. We can save genetic diversity. We can save culture and knowledge. We can save enough of each species to rebuild. But we cannot save whole planets. The energy requirements are too great. She walked to a window that looked out over the Ark's expanse. That is why we need your help. The Ark's design can be scaled. We can build more pocket dimensions. Expand the capacity, but we need resources we do not have. We need the industrial capacity of the collective. We need the expertise of species who have mastered technologies we are still learning. We built the foundation, but we cannot finish it alone. The delegation fell silent. They understood now the magnitude of what Sarah was offering and what she was asking. Finally, Thelzara spoke. You mentioned that in other timelines we tried to suppress your knowledge or take it by force. What makes you think we will act differently this time? Sarah turned to face the ambassador. Because this time we showed you the threat first. We gave you proof that you could verify independently. We waited until you understood how serious the danger is. And most importantly, we finished the Ark before we revealed it. We do not need your permission to save ourselves. But we are offering you the chance to save yourselves too. She walked closer to Thelzara. In those other timelines, we came to you weak and desperate. We gave you the power to control us. This time we come as equals. You need what we have built. We need what you can provide. Neither of us can survive alone. That is the foundation for a true partnership. Thelzara stared at Sarah for a long moment. Then she did something unexpected. She bowed her head, a gesture of respect among her people. You are correct, she said quietly. We underestimated you. We saw primitives because we wanted to see primitives. We measured you by our standards and found you lacking. But you were playing a different game entirely. You were not trying to catch up to us. You were trying to survive us, Sarah nodded. And now we need to survive together. The cascade is accelerating. Our latest calculations show it will arrive in 30 years. Maybe less. We have 3 decades to expand the Ark, to prepare evacuation protocols to save as much as we can. But only if we work together. Only if the collective accepts humanity as a true partner. And if we refuse, asked the energy-being scientist. Sarah's face was grim. Then humanity seals the Ark and waits out the cascade alone. We will survive. But we will be the only ones. And when we emerge into whatever universe remains, we will rebuild from the ashes of a galaxy that was too proud to accept help from primitives. The words hung in the air like a sword. Thelzara straightened. I will report to the council. I will recommend full partnership. But I cannot promise they will agree. There are species in the collective who will see this as humanity trying to seize power. I know, Sarah said. But the clock is ticking, Ambassador. And the cascade does not care about politics. The Galactic Council debated for 2 weeks. Every day brought new arguments, new concerns, new fears. Some species wanted full access to the Ark technology immediately. Others demanded that humanity submit to collective oversight. A few threatened to reject the partnership entirely, preferring to face extinction with dignity rather than accept help from a species they had dismissed as primitive. Finally, a vote was called. The resolution was simple. Accept humanity as equal partners in the Ark initiative or maintain the quarantine and face the null cascade alone. The vote passed by a narrow margin. 512 in favor. 335 against. Sarah received the news in her quarters aboard the orbital station above Earth. Thelzara delivered it personally. Congratulations, the ambassador said. though her voice was heavy. You have your partnership. But I must warn you, not all species accept this decision. There will be resistance. There will be sabotage attempts. Not everyone believes the cascade is real, and not everyone trusts humanity's motives. Sarah nodded. She had expected this. We will deal with opposition as it comes. Right now we need to begin the expansion immediately. Every day we delay costs lives. Over the next 5 years, the Ark Initiative transformed from a human secret into a galactic project. Hundreds of species contributed their expertise. The Kryn provided their gravitational engineering, allowing Ark modules to be built in stable orbits around planets. The Zephyr contributed biological preservation matrices that could keep entire ecosystems in stasis indefinitely. The Karathi shared their quantum consciousness mapping technology, allowing minds and memories to be preserved. But humanity remained at the center. The core dimensional technology was theirs, and they controlled the primary Ark structure. This created tension, but it also created respect. The galaxy was learning that humans were not just clever, they were necessary. Sarah became the coordinator of the entire project. She traveled from world to world, meeting with leaders, solving problems, and managing the enormous logistics of preparing for extinction. She aged visibly during those years. Her hair turned gray, lines appeared on her face, but her determination never wavered. On the 5th anniversary of the partnership, Thelzara came to Earth again. This time she brought a request. The Sovereignty Pact wants to see the Ark, she said. They represent 47 species who voted against the partnership. They claim the cascade is a hoax designed to give humanity control over the galaxy. If we can show them proof, real proof, perhaps they will join us. Sarah was hesitant. The Sovereignty Pact had been hostile from the beginning. Their leader, a massive creature called Vorn who came from a species of conquerors, had publicly called humanity liars and manipulators. But Sarah also understood politics. Unity was fragile. Every species they could bring into the fold increased their chances of survival. I will show them something, Sarah agreed. But I need a promise from you first, Ambassador. What I am about to reveal is difficult. It is painful, and it must be kept secret from the general population. Can you ensure that? Thelzara's 3 eyes studied Sarah carefully. What are you going to show us? The truth about how many times we have already failed, Sarah answered quietly. The delegation from the Sovereignty Pact arrived 1 week later. Vorn towered over everyone, standing 4 meters tall with armored plates covering his body and 6 arms that ended in claws. He radiated hostility and suspicion. I do not believe in your cascade, Vorn announced as soon as he entered the Ark. I believe you have created an elaborate deception to make yourselves important. Show me something real, or I will recommend that my people withdraw from all collective activities until this fraud is exposed. Sarah said nothing. She simply gestured for the delegation to follow her. She led them deep into the Ark, into sections that even most humans had never seen. They walked for what felt like hours through corridors that bent in impossible ways. Finally, they reached a massive chamber with walls that seemed to be made of frozen light. This is the Memorial Hall, Sarah said softly. It contains records from the probe that started everything. The probe from our future that warned us about the cascade. She activated a control panel and the walls came alive. Images appeared, 3-dimensional and so realistic they seemed more real than reality itself. They showed cities burning, planets cracking apart, stars dying, and everywhere the same pattern of reality tearing like fabric. These are recordings from other timelines, Sarah explained. Timelines where humanity did not build the Ark in secret. Timelines where the cascade came and we were not ready. The images changed. Now they showed humans, but these were not the humans standing before the delegation. These humans were different. Some wore strange uniforms. Some spoke languages that did not exist in this timeline. Some had technologies that were subtly wrong, as if they had developed differently. This is Timeline 17, Sarah said, pointing to one set of images. In this timeline, we revealed the cascade to the collective immediately in 1950. You dismissed us. You said our mathematics were wrong. When the cascade came, Earth was one of the first planets destroyed. Population 7 billion. All lost. She moved to another section. This is Timeline 23. We waited until we achieved faster-than-light travel in 2078. We joined the collective as junior members. We shared our knowledge of the hidden dimensions. 3 species tried to steal our research. A war broke out. The conflict weakened us so much that when the cascade arrived, we could not mount an effective response. Earth survived, but barely. 90% casualties. Image after image. Timeline after timeline. Each one showed a different path. Different choices. Different outcomes. But they all ended the same way. Destruction, death, failure. Vorn had fallen silent. His 6 arms hung limp at his sides. Even his aggressive posture had softened. This is timeline 38, Sarah continued, her voice thick with emotion. This one hurts the most. In this timeline, we built a smaller version of the Ark. We saved 2 million humans. We offered refuge to other species, but only if they submitted to human authority. We became what we feared others would become. Tyrants. When the cascade came, other species refused our help. They chose death over subjugation. We survived, but we were alone. And the humans who emerged from the Ark were not recognizable as the species we once were. She turned to face the delegation. Tears ran down her face. Do you understand now? We have seen ourselves fail in so many ways. We have seen ourselves become victims. We have seen ourselves become monsters. This time, this timeline, we are trying something different. We are trying to save everyone as equals, not as rulers, not as subjects, as partners. The walls went dark except for one final image. It showed a settlement on a barren planet. Humans lived there, but they were thin and desperate. The structures were crude. The technology was primitive. This is from Timeline 41, Sarah whispered. This is what happened to the humans who survived the cascade in that timeline. They sealed themselves in the Ark when the cascade came. But the Ark in that timeline was smaller, less advanced. When they emerged, they found that every other species had been destroyed. They were alone in the universe. This settlement is their attempt to rebuild, but there are only 8,000 of them left. Not enough genetic diversity, not enough knowledge, not enough hope. She looked at Vorn directly. That is what we are trying to avoid. That is why we built the Ark large enough for everyone. That is why we need your help, not because we want power, but because we have seen what happens when we survive alone, and it is not a future worth living. Vorn was silent for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was different. Softer, almost humble. I came here believing you were liars, he said. I came here prepared to expose you as frauds. But this, he gestured at the dark walls. This is not fraud. This is grief. This is the weight of knowledge that no species should have to carry. He turned to his delegation. We have been fools. We saw humanity's offer as a threat to our pride. We did not understand that they were offering us their pain, their experience, their hard-won wisdom from timelines where they failed. Thelxara stepped forward. You will support the Ark initiative. Vorn nodded slowly. We will. And I will personally apologize to every human I have insulted. You were not trying to control us. You were trying to save us. There is a difference, and I was too blind to see it. Sarah wiped her eyes. Thank you. Your support means more than you know. The Pact represents 47 species. With your resources and expertise, we can expand the Ark's capacity by 30%. That is millions of lives saved. As the delegation left the memorial hall, Thelxara stayed behind with Sarah. Why did you never show this to the council? The ambassador asked. This would have convinced them immediately. Sarah looked at the dark walls. Because it is too painful. Because the other humans in those timelines were real people. They lived and died and suffered. They are not just data. They are not just warnings. They are us, but for the choices we made. I did not want to use their suffering as a tool. I only show this to people who give me no other choice. Thelxara was quiet for a moment. Then she placed one hand on Sarah's shoulder, a gesture of comfort she had learned from humans. You carry a heavy burden, she said softly. Sarah nodded. We all do now. Welcome to the weight of survival. 25 years after humanity revealed the dimensional arc, the galaxy had transformed. Arc modules existed in orbit around 300 major worlds. Evacuation protocols had been established. Genetic databases had been compiled for 2,000 species. Cultural archives preserved the art, music, literature, and history of civilizations spanning millions of years. But not everyone accepted the new order. The attacks began small. A sabotaged construction site here. A data breach there. At first, Sarah and her team thought it was simple accidents or technical failures. But as the incidents increased, a pattern emerged. Someone was trying to destroy the Ark initiative. The truth came to light when a massive explosion ripped through the Ark module under construction near the Kryn homeworld. The blast killed 200 workers from 17 different species. Among the dead were 37 humans. Sarah stood in the debris field, her face pale as she watched recovery teams search for survivors. Thelxara stood beside her, equally shaken. "Who would do this?" Thelxara whispered. The answer came 3 days later. A group calling themselves the Sovereignty Liberation Front sent a message to every government in the collective. Their leader appeared on screens across the galaxy. His name was Keswick, and he belonged to a species called the Vormacht, ancient conquerors who had once ruled 20 star systems before joining the collective. "The Ark is a trap," Keswick announced in his message. "Humanity seeks to control the galaxy by making us dependent on their technology. They invented the story of the Null Cascade to create fear. They want us to abandon our worlds, our cultures, our independence. They want to herd us into their dimensional prison where they will have total control." The message continued with calls for resistance. Keswick urged species to reject the Ark initiative. He claimed that ancient collective species should face whatever future came with dignity, not hide behind the technology of primitives. Within weeks, more attacks followed. Ark facilities were bombed. Ships carrying construction materials were destroyed. Scientists working on the project were assassinated. The Liberation Front had support from extremists across multiple species. They saw the Ark as humanity's attempt to dominate the galaxy. Sarah called an emergency meeting with the Council's security forces. She stood before them, exhausted and angry. "We need to stop these attacks," she said bluntly. "Every day of delay means fewer people we can save. Every destroyed facility reduces our capacity. These terrorists are not just fighting humanity. They are killing everyone." But the security response was hampered by politics. Some species were reluctant to act too harshly against the Liberation Front. Some secretly sympathized with their message. The investigation moved slowly while more attacks continued. Finally, the Liberation Front made their boldest move. They launched a direct assault on Earth itself. 50 warships appeared in Earth's solar system without warning. They came through hidden jump routes, avoiding all detection. Their target was clear: the primary Ark nexus hidden beneath the Pacific Ocean. If they could destroy it, the entire Ark network would collapse. Earth's defensive satellites activated immediately, but they were designed to handle small threats, not a full military fleet. The warships pushed through the outer defenses and descended toward the ocean. Sarah was in the command center when the attack began. Alarms screamed. Displays showed the incoming ships. Her team scrambled to coordinate a response, but Earth had never built a military fleet. All their resources had gone into the Ark. "We are defenseless," James said, his voice tight with fear. "They will reach the Nexus in 7 minutes. Sarah stared at the displays. 7 minutes. 78 years of work. Billions of lives depending on them. And humanity had no weapons capable of stopping 50 warships. "Actually," she said slowly, "we do have a defense. We just never told anyone about it." She turned to her team. "Remember, we have been building the Ark for 80 years. We have dimensional technology that the galaxy is still learning. We can fold space. We can manipulate reality. Did you really think we would not build something to protect it?" Sarah activated a command sequence that only she and 2 other humans knew existed. Deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, the Ark's defensive systems came online. Systems that had been hidden even from the collective partners. The attacking warships suddenly found themselves surrounded by distortions in space. Reality bent around them. And then in an instant all 50 ships vanished. They did not explode. They did not crash. They simply ceased to be in Earth's solar system. In the Liberation Front's command ship, 10,000 light-years away, Keswick stared in confusion as his attack fleet suddenly appeared next to him. They had been transported across the galaxy in less than a second. Sarah's face appeared on every screen in every ship. Her expression was cold. "We could have erased you," she said quietly. "We have the technology to fold your ships into dimensions where you would never exist. We chose not to. We relocated you far from any Ark facility, but within range of your home systems. You can return home safely." She paused, letting that sink in. "That is the difference between us. You attacked us out of fear and pride. We defended ourselves without killing anyone. You see the Ark as a prison. We see it as salvation. You think we want control. We just want everyone to survive." Sarah's voice grew harder. But understand this clearly. We will protect the Ark. We will protect the people who depend on it. If you attack again, we will not be so gentle. We have shown you mercy once. There will not be a second time. The transmission ended. Across the galaxy, billions of beings who had seen the message fell silent. Humanity had just demonstrated a level of power that shocked even the oldest species. They had technology that could move entire fleets across the galaxy instantly. They had chosen not to use it as a weapon. The Liberation Front collapsed within days. Keswick himself surrendered, claiming he had been misled. The attacks stopped. The Ark Initiative resumed its work. But time was running out faster than anyone had predicted. 5 years later, Sarah's worst fears came true. The dimensional sensors detected a surge in the cascade's progression. The collapse was accelerating. Advanced modeling showed that it would arrive not in 5 years as planned, but in less than 1. "We are not ready," Thelxara said, staring at the data with horror. "We planned for 5 more years of construction. We can only save 60% of the target population now." Sarah nodded grimly. "Then we save who we can. We begin emergency evacuations immediately. Priority goes to children, genetic diversity, and knowledge preservation. We work until the last possible second." The final year was chaos. Ships moved constantly between worlds and Ark modules. Families were torn apart as lotteries determined who would be saved. Entire cities were abandoned as populations were relocated. Some species accepted their fate with calm dignity. Others rioted and fought. Sarah barely slept. She coordinated everything from the command center in the primary Ark. Every decision meant choosing who lived and who died. The weight of it aged her beyond her years. Her hair turned completely white. Her hands shook constantly. Marcus found her one night, staring at a display showing the approaching cascade. "You should rest," he said gently. "I will rest when everyone is safe," Sarah replied. "Or when the cascade takes me. Whichever comes first." The cascade arrived on a Tuesday. The sensors detected it at the edge of the galaxy. A wave of dimensional collapse that moved faster than light. It would reach the core populated regions in 72 hours. Sarah gave the order. "Seal all Ark modules. Begin final transfers. We are out of time." For 3 days, the galaxy watched reality die. Stars simply stopped existing. Planets vanished as if they had never been. Entire civilizations disappeared in silence. The cascade did not burn or destroy. It just erased, removing matter from existence as the dimensional foundation collapsed. Inside the Ark modules, billions of refugees watched through sensors as their homeworlds died. The grief was beyond words. Species that had existed for millions of years saw everything they had built disappear in moments. But the Ark held. The dimensional barriers that humanity had designed remained stable. The pocket dimensions stayed intact even as normal space-time failed around them. Sarah stood in the primary command center with Thelxara beside her. They watched as the cascade passed through the sector where Earth had been. Sarah's homeworld, the planet where humanity had evolved, where they had built their first cities and fought their first wars. Gone. "I am sorry," Thelxara whispered. Sarah nodded, tears streaming down her face. "It is okay. Earth died, but humanity lives. That is what matters." The cascade took 3 months to pass through their entire region of space. When it finally faded, the sensors showed a universe transformed. Where billions of stars had existed, there was now mostly emptiness. A few scattered systems remained, protected by random dimensional anomalies. But 90% of the galaxy had simply ceased to exist. Inside the Ark, life went on. 2,000 species from across the galaxy lived together in the pocket dimensions. It was crowded. It was difficult. Different species had different needs, different cultures, different ways of thinking, but they were alive. Sarah stood before the combined council of survivors. She was old now, 73 years since that first day when,